Previously, we have talked about single-dimensional array. So, because when we are talking about arrays, we mean by array a single-dimensional array. So, one-dimensional array. So, what we studied was something like this. We only studied one-dimensional array. One-dimensional array means like if we have one and then, one, then let's say two, and then three, and then four. That was everything. So there was one line of information, one, two, three. Now what are we going to study is multidimensional or two-dimensional array. What do you mean by multidimensional? Is more than one-dimensional array is known as multidimensional. There can be two-dimensional, three-dimensional, four-dimensional, or any kind of amount of directional. Like in arrays, we only don't have 3 or 4 dimensions, just like a normal physics life. In arrays, we have, let's say, infinity number of direction, infinity number of rahand, bu'ad, in Arabic we say. So, like what we studied right now, before it was single dimensional. Let's study two-dimensional array. Dimensional, okay, array. What do you mean by two-dimensional? Is something like this. There is one, and there is two, and three, and four. And after that, in the second line, there is, let's say, 5, 6, maybe 2 again, and let's say 7. So you see that this is not a one-dimensional array. We have the first row, I have one row, and the second row as well. So how many dimensions I have? 2 dimensions right now. And if I do it something like this, 9, 10, 1, let's say, not 10. Okay. And 0 and 5. Do you think this is three-dimensional? In fact, no. This is not a three-dimensional array. This is still two-dimensional array because we have this side and we have this side as well. So only length and width. Length and width, yeah. درێژی و پانیمان هەیە بەس لەمەیە یعنی چەندێکمان هەبێ ئەمە چەندێک درێژ بێت ئەو ئەڕێیە چەندێک درێژەکەی چەند بێ و بۆعدەکەی چەندێک بێت قوڵێک ئەوکەی چەندێک بێ پانیەکەی هەر چەندێک بێت still it is a two-dimensional array because we have one and two sides. What do you mean by three-dimensional? It means like a box, like length, width, and depth. يعني إسالم يك الرو يكم there are 4 columns. So this is the first, let's say, the first row is the first dimensional array. But this row has a width as well. So this is the second dimension. And if it has another dimension to have to go into the into a depth, then it has a 3 dimension. Okay. So right now this one has only 2 dimensions. Okay. If it is any less, I mean, if the one was the first row was 1 million column and it was 1 million row, still it is 2-dimensional array, not 3-dimensional array. Okay. So let's create something like this. Control K and C. Let's create a 2-dimensional array. Let's see how it is happening. In fact, a 2-dimensional array, if you know 1-dimensional array, it's very easy to learn 2 and 3 and the other dimensional arrays. It's the same thing, either declaring it, let's say to the array. So we have the name of the array is two-dimensional array, and I'm saying I'm creating two places, two brackets. The first one is the length. I mean the number of elements in a horizontal line. Okay, so this is the horizontal. So now how many elements? No, no, sorry. The first one is the row, and the second one is the column. Just understand it like this. So the first one is how many elements, how many number of arrays we have. Let's say this one is one array. It seems like if we don't have this kind of thing, if we don't have these shaded places, so it's a single dimensional array. So if we only have this shaded place, it is still a single dimensional. If you only have this shaded place, still. But so the row means how many rows I have in the two-dimensional array. So this is for the row. As if you remember, we talked about for loops. We said two for loops inside each other. The first for loop is for the row, and the second for loop is for the column, if you remember. So this was known as the row. We were calculating the rows using this for loop. And the second for loop, we use it for the columns. The same thing. The first place inside the bracket is for row, number of rows, and the second place is for the columns. So if I have, let's say, 3 by 2, this means that there will be three rows and 2 columns. If what's this, for example, 1, 2, 3. So there are three rows, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So there are 4 columns. Okay. So right now we are creating this. That's why I'm saying integer. The name is two-dimensional array. Number of rows is 3, and the number of columns is 4. Okay. How I'm going to initialize them? Right now it is only declaring. Okay. So this is only declaration of the two-dimensional array. How I'm going to initialize them? As you remember, this is the two for loops we have studied for the row and for the column. So the same thing we are going to use to either see out, print out, or inserting some numbers into the array. So here I'm going to say, let's make the row and column. So integer constant, and I'm saying row equals to 3 rows, and integer constant column equals to 4. And instead of 3 and 4, I'm going to say row and column. The first row is determining the row. So I'm going to say row. And the second for loop is for determining the column. So I'm going to say, oops, sorry. This is I, and this will be integer j. And this one will be only j. And this is smaller than column and j plus plus. So the first for loop was for calculating the rows, and the second for loop was for calculating the columns. So how I'm going to cin to the elements? So simply using cin and what? And then name of the array. Name of the array. Which row and which column? This is the place. So at I row and j column. So what we basically do is this. At the I row, when I is equal to 0, j equals to 0. So I row means the row. When the row is 0, j will be, let's say we'll put 1. Then I still 0, but j is 1. then I still, the first row still, and j is 3. Then I is still the same, j is 4. Then j finishes, and the second for loop is finishing, so I'm going to put an end line just right here. So a new line will come, then 5. It comes to the second row. That I'm going to insert something. What I'm going to insert? 5. So I'm still in the second row. I'm going to insert 2. So 2, 5, 2, 7. These are j in the j places. The I is for the row places and the j is for the column places. So I'm going to direct the user to enter something. Enter numbers into the row and column. So this is not the row, this is I. Enter number into the I row, so this is the 0 row, and j column. So these will be the indexes of I of the row and the index of column. Okay. So let's try it. This is C out. Okay. And when I have done it, I want to print it out. So how I'm going to print it out? The same way. I'm going to use 2 for loops. One for loop for integer I. The length is row, and another for loop. Another for loop is for integer j. Yes. And the length is column. And why we are doing this, we don't need this, but we need in the print the same thing because we don't need it there. After finishing, it will directly come to the first line. And what else? What else? Yeah, here we should print it. See out. And what are we going to print? The name of the array at which place? At I and j places. I is for the row and j is for the column. And after finishing it, I want to give a tab. So /t and nothing else. So after finishing the first row, it's going to give an end line and everything is ready. Here as well, so column, and I want to give an end line just here because I don't want to see into input data after this. Okay, everything is good, and I'm going to run the program. Let's see what are we facing. So into the number into the 0 row and 0 column, I'm going to insert, let's say 5. 0 row, first column, 2. 0 row and second column, 4. 0 row, third column, 7. Then it becomes 1 row, 0 column, 3. 1 row, 1 column, 6. 1 row, 2 column, 2. 1 row, 3 column, 12. And 2 row, 0 column, 9, 8, 7, 4. So you see, we have 4. This is for the 2 row and third column. And what we have is this 1, 2, 3 rows, 1, 2, 3, and 4 columns. So this is the 2-dimensional array I have printed. So I have put all these numbers I inserted into the 2-dimensional array, and I printed it here. Okay, so when you will be using these kind of things, think about a report. The report has, let's say, what do I mean by a billing report? Billing report, like you are going to you go to a mat'am, or let's say you are buying something from a shop and there are many things inside it. Let's say the first you have bought this thing and it was by that amount of number money, and it was, let's say, the real price was something like this and stuff and stuff. So how many rows I have? 10 rows I have. So this whole thing, when you are going to try to print it or try to send it to the print, you can send all this information into a two-dimensional array. Okay, so in a real life application, well, sometimes it can be used just for this kind of stuff. Okay, or a very simple example in the multiplication. What do you mean? A table. So multiplication table composed of rows and columns. So 1, 2, 3, and then 1, 2, 1, 2, 4, and goes like this. So in creating multiplication table, it's very easy to use double dimensional array and save the result into double dimensional array. Okay, so this is only double dimensional array. Can I have more than double dimensional array? Yes, of course. I will create another array, integer, uh, three-dimensional or multi-dimensional array. And I'm going to make it three dimensions, three bu'ad. The first one is 3 column, 3 rows, 5 column, and what about the depth? Let's say 8. There's no problem with that. Yani, the first row has how many columns? Has 5 columns, and each column has a depth of 8 elements. I hope it is clear. So instead of using, if I just comment this out, these are too much numbers because if I wanted to insert, okay, I'll insert it automatically. I'm going to comment this out and minimize it, and I'm going to paste it. So, okay, and this one as well. Okay, so I have multi-dimensional array. You may think of it like you may by now thought about it how we can like insert elements. So for two-dimensional arrays, we had 1 and 2, 4. What about for three-dimensional array? What do you think? Of course, another for loop. Integer, not I, this time ij, let's say k. And what's the length? The length is let's say, okay, 3, 5, and 8. So this way, I'm able to insert the elements into the double-dimensional, multi-dimensional array. And what else we have? We should have another for loop as well. Here, 2, and this one is k, and the length is 8. Because there's no three-dimensional stuff here, I'm only able to see the three-dimensional array like two-dimensional array, because I'm going to, when I'm printing, I'll give a cout end line here, because we cannot see the depth of the, okay, we cannot see the depth of the values. So here I'm going to say cout, not cout. Yeah, let's make the cout first of all. No, yeah, let's make it. I'm going to say cout, enter the number into the I row and j column I row, j column, and row, column, and then depth. What's depth? And k, let's say, and k, yeah, depth. Okay, so enter the number into the I row, j column, yeah, and k depth, and it's going to make it automatically because it takes too much time to insert all the information, all the data. So I'm going to make it automatic, and I'm going to say, let's say integer counter equals to 1. This one equals to counter and counter plus plus. This is I, this is j, and this is k. So I created a counter outside, and just to understand that in the ijk everything and finished. So this counter, the first time ijk, the first element is the first row, the first column, the first depth is 1. Then the first row, the first column, the second depth is 2, and it goes like this. Okay, and counter plus plus. And here I'm going to show the result like this. Cout and something like this. What we have done previously, let's do the same. So we gave a tab. Yeah, let's give a tab as well. And yeah, let's give a tab. And after the row, after the depth finished, it gives a tab. And here, let's have a message. Depth finished. Depth finished. And we are having an end line and another, oops, and another end line. So 2 end lines, then another row and stuff, and thing like this. And here we are going to say column finished. 2 end lines. Okay, let's run our program. It may need some time. Look at this. It's very nice. 0 row, 0 column, 0 depth. 0 row, 0 column, first depth. 0 row, 0 column, second depth. And then it becomes 0 row, 0 column, 7 depth. And then 0 row, 1 column, and 0 depth. And it goes like this. Then the second column, then the third column. And after third column and the 7 depth of the third column, the first row is starting. So it goes like this. And here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, depth finished, 1 depth, 2 depth, 3, and 4 depth. After it finished, a column is finished, and then another 4 depth, and then column finished, and then another 4 depth and column finished. Because we have 3 rows and 5 columns. One, two, three, four, five, six, seven, 8, and depth finished, and then yeah. So 0, 1, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 column and 7 depth. Is there a problem here? Yes, so we should have a problem maybe. So these are not row. This should be 3, and this should be 5, and this should be 8. And the same way, this should be 3, this should be 5, and 8. Let's run the program again. Yeah, right now it's true. So we have how many columns? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we have 5 depth, and the column is finishing, and then 5 more depth, then column finishing, and 5 more depth, and then column finishing. And look at the numbers: 0 row, 0 column, 0 depth, and it comes one. How many columns? 5. Yeah, 2, 3, 4, and 5 columns. And oh, this is not 5. This is the first column, and this is the second column, and third column, and the fourth column, and the fifth column for the 0th row. I think it is, we don't need too much exaggerate on it. So it's like a table of 3-dimensional stuff. The 2-dimensional array was a 2-dimensional, like a chessboard, a 2-dimensional thing. And 3-dimensional, it's like a box. It has 3 dimension. The rows are horizontal and vertical and in depth. That's it. And that's everything about 2-dimensional and multi-dimensional arrays. Have a nice time.